Okay, so we're back here with another episode of Utility Emergency Response Podcast. We're going off a little topic, but still a little bit related to emergency response. We have here Joe Abrams. He was a guest in another episode that we recorded a couple months ago, so we had him back because we feel he's so relevant to our industry. I also have my co-host, of course, Jim Walbrink, and we're gonna get into this. It's gonna be a more lengthier episode, but we're gonna, got more solutions for water and wastewater utilities or any type of utility to benefit from. So, Jim, why don't you take it from here, buddy?
All right, great. Yeah, for those listening, we will have in the show notes the link to the previous podcast, so you can get more information. Joe, welcome back again. Great to have you. I think our history goes back almost 2 decades now.
Almost, yeah, pretty close to it.
So for those that are just hearing this episode, can you give us just a little bit of kind of the Reader's Digest version for some of those of us that remember what Reader's Digest
Yeah,
version is of ACS and in your group?
sure, sure. So I'll give a couple answers. One of them is, I guess, is the official shortened elevator pitch, I guess, is that officially we're it's called the Alliance for Community Solutions. Everybody calls it ACS and for short. And we are is an interlocal nonprofit that brings together these local jurisdictions so that they can define and deliver tools and technologies that help communities be safer, stronger, and more resilient. I like to take a little bit more informal approach to it and kind of describe people that are less technical to say, I think of ACS team as a cross between a counselor and a handyman. I said, we kind of go in and we work to listen to those communities to figure out what their problems are, what they think their issues are. We kind of do group interaction sessions with them to figure out how do we explore different options and help them understand the underlying pieces of it. And then we often then at the end of it, the handyman part comes in when we provide the technical skill to help them build some useful tools in order that are resilient that they can actually be to sustain their security with. So
Yeah, from my experience working with you and ACS, I would say you're more of a kind of a technology matchmaker.
okay,
Fine.
that's a good
You've
analogy.
got the technology, somebody's got the problem. Let's see how we can work the technology into fixing this. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, no, I guess both the analogies work pretty good. But well, you talked about kind of the ACS team. Give us a little bit more of what makes up that team.
Well, there's several components to that, and you're kind of familiar with it, but I'll try and explain that to the listeners. Is that the one of them? I'll start by saying that as you know, I've got several decades of experience working in a lot of different industries, and I've literally been blessed by having had the opportunity to work with some of the finest men and women in technology, engineering, and business throughout my career. And I can say that I have never been prouder to be a part of any group than the nonprofit team that we have here at ACS. Their amazing talent, passions are for our mission really drives everything that we've achieved. But when I talk about the overall ACS team, there's other elements of that, and I really need to mention about there's also technology and professional partners. These are organizations and people that represent them that become a part of that team. And of course, the active community leaders themselves that truly provide the vision and continue to do so, the resources, the local government expertise to complete that overall team. Without them, none of this would be possible.
And you talked a little bit at the very beginning about an interlocal, and I know for me and probably for others, that's kind of a new term. How, what is that, and how does that fit into this whole process?
it's a term in one form or another. Probably about 80% or 90% of the states can work with interlocals, but probably less than 20% actually call it an interlocal. What the term interlocal means is that it's a collaborative agreement. It's usually it's a different kind of a contract where local jurisdictions unite in order to achieve a particular shared benefit or to tackle some shared community concern or problem that they have. And as an example, the ACS program was started when 12 counties in the San Antonio area had this mission that they wanted to take the resources to develop solutions that make their communities safe again. And this was after 9/11, and they were concerned about terrorism, but all kinds of disasters. And so they, of course, they also had a willingness to invite other jurisdictions to participate in that journey. And so that's a key part of a lot of interlocals, not all of them, but a lot of them will welcome more members to join the flock, if you will. And here we are 2 decades later, and I guess you'd say the adventure continues. And we're now provide the services for hundreds of jurisdictions across 3 different states.
So someone wanted to start an interlocal, what would the membership consist of? How would they go about doing that?
So if they wanted to start an interlocal, then well, first of all, if you want to start an interlocal, it has to be allowed by your state to start an interlocal. There are in Texas, where many of our members, that's where the program started. Interlocals are a way of life. There's literally thousands of interlocals that are active all the time in the state of Texas, and especially there's so many rural communities that the only way they achieve stuff is through interlocals, which is similar in some respects to like a mutual aid agreement. Some states, they don't allow you to form an interlocal, but they allow you to buy from an interlocal, or have the services. So, for example, in some states, even if you can't form it, if you want to form an interlocal, if there's an interlocal organization like ours that exists, or another one that you want to join or use, you sign that agreement, and your state will allow you to become a participating member, and then you just work through whatever the rules are. In our case, it's usually started by a county that says, okay, I'm going to bring those resources together, and they say that they're going to they will work to bring in other counties or even cities or schools or different jurisdictions or entities within their county, their area of concern, in order to bring in partners in order to expand that program.
Okay. So with an interlocal, what's I guess, how does the interlocal work different than just kind of your traditional go find a vendor, for what you need type of process?
Well, it's the traditional vendor model, how a contractor would go out and find a particular vendor is that they would have to go out, and most states require some sort of at a certain dollar amount, usually a few $1,000s, maybe $5,000. They have to go out and do a competitive bid. They have to bring these people in. You have to go through a process of evaluation, determination. In Texas and a lot of states, even at the federal level, a lot of the federal grants that are out there, it will say that if you're providing or purchasing this service directly from an interlocal program, then it fulfills the requirement for competitive bid. And so one of our members at the last kind of reminds me that one of our members stood up at the very first day of our conference, that we were inviting in new members that as a part of that, and they were kind of educating about what's the difference. And his statement was, I'll try and paraphrase this as best I can. He said something like along the lines of, with a for-profit vendor, he said the solutions, the communities, typically you only end up buying what they have to sell because that's all they have. And he says it's too often just either a point solution and certainly not a good fit for local and especially rural jurisdictions, which was a large part of what we represent. And so he said that, you get what you have. You don't really have a lot of influence on how things change. And he said, but with participating in the ACS Interlocal, of course, he was promoting us at that time at the show. And he said that the partnership allows for communities to work with the nonprofit development teams in designing and true community-based solutions, ensuring that they hit the target every time. And he said it's just night and day the difference. From my perspective, taking a step back from that, as you and I know each other long enough to know I've been before this. I've spent a lot of time as an executive consultant in my previous lives doing work for businesses. I've worked with a lot of models out there, and I can say that unlike that traditional vendor-driven approach, this collaborative model where we're working directly with the customers, if you will, members of the Interlocal all the time. It is far less effort and software development than I've ever seen, and we deliver far better products that are used by 90% of our members. I mean, they hit the target, like I said, and they love it. And if they don't love it, we tweak it. We immediately make the changes they want, and then it gets deployed, and then they do love it. So it's not this, well, you buy this 100% solution, and I use 5% of it because that's all I understand of it. So.
When I hear about your discussion with the Interlocal, to me, it also seems as though it helps in like a vetting process, that I'm not having to recreate the wheel. I can take advantage of one of the other interlocals, their efforts, and then just piggyback on that. Is that kind of a fair way to look at that?
Sure, absolutely. That is we've had a number of, for example, I won't go into the details on that, but we've had solutions that we've developed in New Jersey. That the New Jersey Health Department developed a capability that they wanted a certain thing to happen, and it ended up being used a little bit in Texas, but quite a bit in California to solve a wholly different problem, because the local communities, whether or not it's on the East Coast or the West Coast or Texas or wherever that work is, that the local jurisdictions, the cultures are different in New Jersey than there are in California or in Texas, but the problems are 98% the same. It's the local jurisdictions. Well, the politics of some people get along, some people don't. What we're trying to fix, the limitations you have in local government versus what you have to do with the state reporting and the feds. There's a whole lot of consistency between those problems, and if you solve it one area, it's a 85-90% solution to a whole lot of other communities. And it's very unique. The problems they have are very unique to local government. It just doesn't exist. For-profits sell mostly to business companies. And I know a lot of people say we want to run our organization, our local government, like a company. And there's a little bit of truth to that, but there's a whole lot of things you cannot and aren't allowed to do that a company can do, or a government can do that a company can't, that you just need to redesign the solution a little bit. So when you have something designed for local government that maximizes what its ability to do within the rules of what it can do, you can actually streamline a lot of those processes far more than what any vendor solution built for companies would ever think of.
Okay. I think the application you're talking about was the mass prophylaxis application that we converted to CPOD distribution for the water utilities, for the face coverings that EPA provided for the pandemic.
Right.
Yeah, and you're right. Here you have one solution that may have 80-90% of the components, just needs to be tweaked a little bit to fulfill another need. Instead of giving out inoculations, you're giving out face coverings.
Face coverings, or giving out water. You and I've talked about disaster. You have an earthquake, and you can have people sign up to come in and get 5-gallon containers of water, get them refilled or whatever, and you don't have massive lines. It just literally manages the whole process. It's the same process. It just happens different ways of distributing out different needs. So.
Yeah. That's one tool that was used in one way, but then also converted to another. What other tools and gizmos, components do you have out there now?
Okay, well, there's probably we've done as like I said, you and I've known each other a long time. We've done dozens of different solutions and different ways, different tools for use different functions. And there's three that kind of come to mind. I'm kind of excited about that we're working on right now, and are recent projects. And it's really going to, I think, kind of take our whole program to the next level. The One of them is it's a project called the Ballot Box Defender, and it's a tool used for securing polling sites, or election locations where voting happens. Okay, and another one that we're working that's equally, actually in some ways even more exciting, is a project called the Brown Box, and I can get into that a little more about naming and what it comes in. It's not really specific what it does, but the which is really a toolbox. I would describe as a toolbox for law enforcement that to use in schools and other high target locations to provide key resources they need in order to make school response better for like active shooter incidents. And then the third one that's really, we have a lot going on discussion at our recent conference called the Summit, is a piece of software called My Nexus. And My Nexus is actually a project we're working with, developed in California, and for the water industry, some of our members out there. And it is the software that connects residents to real-time water leak alerts. So it saves them money, of course. That's one reason they would do it. But the bigger issue, I think, and more important one, is it's conserving the valuable water resources during these times of drought. California has it, Texas is going through it right now.
What's the, I guess, I mean, that's a lot that, I mean, has that been in development for a long time, or how did like the black box, the polling come about?
So, well, that like most of our projects, I said we start with somebody presents a problem to us, and the problem was pretty simple. I got a call from one of the county judges, who's a county administrator in Texas, called the county judge, and they he called me up and to just come out of a conference because they were getting briefings, and this is in the summer of 2024. And it was reported that civil disturbances have been occurring and occurred at dozens of polling locations, probably, I mean, many dozens of them across the United States, and quite a number of them in Texas during the 24 spring primaries. And they were really concerned that the 24 fall election was going to be even more divisive and create more conflict. And so they said, just need to be aware of that. And this judge asked and said, can we take the program the similar to, as I'll make an analogy, you'll understand, the check-in checkout box we talked about that we have, that they said, can you take that, convert it over so that it's a simpler version of it that just works for notifying polling at polling locations. I said, sure. And he said, then he sprung it on the last one. He says, can you do this in 3 months? And I'm going, maybe. I said, we'll try. And so we kind of gave that assignment to we were about 4 months out, and we wanted to try and beat the election cycle in the fall. So we did that, and we over that period of time we developed an alpha unit in about the first 30 days. And then we created in the next 30 days a beta unit that we actually demonstrated to the judge and his elections officials to how that would work and what it was. They provided some design changes they wanted to see in it that they thought would be better. And about 30 days later, we delivered 10 of the units to secure their 10 polling locations. And it worked flawlessly. It was great. That's, I guess, met the requirement for the fall election. Fortunately, there was not any major event that happened at that particular location, but there were some big benefits to the poll workers.
So describe how does the product work?
What it does is that it consists of this. Like I said, this one's pretty simple. It's and that was one of the challenges we had, was that to simplify it. Some of the research, we started looking at what's out there. What are things that happen? And one of the things we found was that the polling locations, true where I vote anyway, and it certainly is across Texas, that the average poll worker, most of them not volunteers anymore. They do pay them, but they're very part-time specific, and they are typically retired upper 60s to upper 70-year-old people. And so plus the fact that in Texas and many other states, like my state, they're not allowed to have cell phones active, or sometimes even in the location if you're a poll worker. Where I go to vote, they actually have you turn your cell phone off when you enter into and they just don't want the interruptions and phone calls coming in and people disrupting the process. So cell phones wouldn't really work. Plus, they're more complicated, and you don't want that. You want something to be very simple. So what it does is that it is about a 12-inch box that we went out and tried different cases we could buy, and we picked what we could fit the components into. That was the alpha beta version of it, to figure out how we wanted to do that. And then inside of it is it's got a whole power system inside. It's got a battery that runs it for 6 hours without power. In case the power gets cut, it still operates it. It has 3 buttons inside. 2 of them call for law enforcement. One of them calls for a medical alert in case there's a heart attack or enough violence that somebody's injured and they need an ambulance. And inside it's got also a transmitter, and it also connects up to a cell network. So you can either connect it to Wi-Fi, or you can also connect it to a cellular network. And from that location, you just literally take this box and you turn it, and you click the button on the right, and it turns it on, and it connects up to the cell network, and you run a test, and you hand out these buttons, and anybody there with instructions that if you feel concerned or you feel nervous about somebody, hit the button, and law enforcement will come running. So I've got an example. If I've got a picture of it, you want to see that?
See one if you can share it.
Sure. Let me get to there's the share button. Says I don't have the right to share.
I think you have to open that up, Isaac.
He should be able to now.
Others.
Okay, try that again. There you go. So this is what the box looked like. I put a scale on it so you could kind of see the size difference, I guess. Is that
Yeah, we see it.
you see that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the Ballot Box Defender, and it's in a Pelican case. It's about 12 inches tall and 14 or 15 inches long and about 6 inches thick. So it's pretty small. But it has everything self-contained inside of that. And like I said, you can just bring it, and the buttons are in a little case inside the box, and you just open it up and distribute the buttons and close it back up again, and it sits over in the corner and does its thing. So
looks like 2 different types of buttons on the side there.
Right.
Yeah.
The one button, these buttons are the ones that call. We want to make 2 different ones because that's the ones that call for law enforcement. And this one will call, it also goes to law enforcement, but it also requests specifically an ambulance. And so it doesn't show it on here, but there's this one, we actually have a caduceus on the button itself. So in the box, so it says this is a medical call button. So it's sometimes they leave it with the box. Sometimes the presiding judge of the election at that location, they'll sometimes give it to them as a second button. But it says if anybody's injured, or sometimes it's I want law enforcement's going to show up either way. but they want an ambulance to be rolling, and that's especially important in rural communities. There's a lot of communities we serve that where the ambulance people, like firefighters, are volunteers. And so when that notice goes out, you can go to law enforcement, which also goes to dispatch, but then dispatch has to turn around and then call the emergency services district, and then they call out their ambulance their EMTs to come to the ambulance to pick up the ambulance and go to the call. What ours does is we know all those people ahead of time, so the notice goes directly to the EMTs. So even though dispatch, by the time the dispatch calls them and lets them know, or their services district calls them, they may already be halfway to the ambulance or already in the ambulance heading to the scene. And so just whether it's a heart attack, it's the same as similar to, it's obviously a different threat than an active attack. But in both of those cases, seconds saves lives. If you can get that EMT there to put the defibrillator on a minute sooner, or 2 minutes, or 3 minutes sooner, if I'm the guy laying on the floor, I'm telling you, the 3 minutes is a big deal. So
if I understand correctly, this is a device that's used for rapid deployment of police and medical for polling places, so that you don't have to have an officer staged there or somewhere around there.
That is correct, and that's that was one of the concerns that in our research was that all of our members said that there's a few of them that do place officers, deputies at those polling locations, but they don't like to do it, and it's a more recent event or concern because of again, because of the kind of the division right now there is in the United States between, it's a little bit more violent than our history has been, and so as a part of that, they are this allows them, the law enforcement are nearby, but it allows them to not be potentially deterring voters that, that just because they have some outstanding traffic tickets, I'm not going to go in there because there's law enforcement saying I don't want to be arrested. Well, they're not going to be arrested in most places I know of, but they just don't want to have it. That has nothing that we'll worry about the tickets tomorrow. What we want you to do is vote. So you need to come in and vote. You're an American, you need to vote. So that's what it does. It allows the officers to be around at another location and to actually but be within seconds away. And one of the in our summary of we were asking and came back with some of the polling people after the program was over, and in our subsequent discussions with them, they said that one of the poll workers early on had actually bent over and actually accidentally pushed her button, and they said that it was like 10 or 15 seconds, and officers, the two deputies came in, and he said that they were there. They said it was that fast, and they said it didn't take long for all of the other polling locations, because they kind of they have floaters that go kind of between auditors and stuff between the different sessions, and they were kind of telling that to people. And he said that everybody said afterwards, once they knew that, it's two things: they just really loved the box and the buttons, and said it was really easy to use. But they said they really, even though law enforcement had said, yeah, we're just around the corner, they said having that actually demonstrated one time, even accidentally, they said everybody just got a lot calmer. They said, I haven't felt that safe in years at a polling place. And they said, I've been volunteering for a long time. It says, knowing that literally they're seconds away, and that things just don't escalate that fast. So they said, so I just felt a lot safer. And that's the whole point of it. So
yeah,
that's pretty amazing. Wow.
That's, I mean, one, quick development time. Was there some kind of root technology that you already had that you worked to convert?
Well, yeah, the technology itself, for example, as I had sort of mentioned earlier, I've told you is that we kind of use some of the ideas that we had in the check-in, check-out box, which is an accountability for first responders to be able to, and of course it has battery power. It also runs for hours without off its batteries, and so we use that same design and that same technology to do that. There's also we do a lot of connection between panic systems and access control or door controls, as well as notifications. So we have a mass notification system that ties into all of the like texting, emails, voice calls. There's numerous other ways we can communicate through the internet. And there's also, we already tie in this particular county, we tie into their radio system, so we can actually do a live broadcast on their radio. So, and they preferred that in this particular case. The officers that were sitting in their patrol unit that may have been a half a block or a block or a half away, they actually got the notice across their radio channel at the same time dispatch heard it. So they're actually are heading over there before dispatch. They don't dispatch. We'll follow up with them, but they get the initial 10-second message that says, "Here's the address, and here's somebody's calling for law enforcement." And so all we did is we took that and shrunk it down to put it all in a box, and says, "Okay, we're going to make it run off battery power. We're going to put it all inside of this in about 2 or 3 layers inside of this little tiny box, and make it to where it's all self-contained and all functional, and has the buttons in there, it has the receivers in there, it has the transmitters in there, everything that's necessary, and the cell connection, all of that can be inside the box." And so it kind of consolidates all of that. And so when they get done, in this particular case, they have these different polling locations. All of the suitcases, when they get done, they just put them back on to in the election office's storage room, along with their voting machines. The ballot box defenders are sitting right on the shelf next to the voting machines, and each one of them, here's the machines for that's going to be at the library next time we vote, and here's the box that goes with it to protect the poll workers and the judges. So it just becomes a part of that kit that goes out to each of these locations. So.
Is there any, it's sitting there for a couple years in between elections. Is there any kind of maintenance or anything that has to be done to it?
So the maintenance, yes, there is. The maintenance is most of the maintenance we do, that there's software and firmware updates. When we do, for example, they're not just sitting there operating most of the time. So our procedures that go with those are that when they're preparing, like they're preparing the voting machines for the election coming up, it's a part of the process that they take those machines and they'll line them all up on a table, and they open up the box inside of it, and they push the button and turn every one of them on. So they all turn on and they all synchronize. And then what happens is it should synchronize down to each one of those locations, but it will actually say on the little screen that's inside the box, it'll say whether or not what the current version is that it's currently synchronized to. And so and we'll just tell them this should be at version 4.14.12, and they'll look at it. And if it doesn't say that, then they'll call and open a help desk ticket and say, okay, unit number such and such isn't saying it's still stuck on 10. And so we need to get that updated to 12. And then our help desk people can use TeamViewer or something like that to log in and take a look at the server itself and see why it's not. It's in this case, the server, the computer that's in there is a Raspberry Pi. So we can actually go in and take a look at that and log in, and we can trigger that to happen ourselves. And if it can't be fixed online, then we can have them unplug it, plug it back in, repower it, try a few things. If it's a component that needs to be replaced, then we can just call for, in their particular case, a technician out of San Antonio that we distribute them, and sometime the next couple of days make an appointment to get out there and go out and replace, bring your kit and be prepared to replace some components, and let's figure out what's going wrong with it. Haven't done that yet, but that's how everything else works. Is that
do you have any images of inside the box at all?
Not here. No, not.
Okay.
I do have inside the box, but however, when you open up the box, when you first open up the box, all it shows you is there's a flat plate on top of it, and then there's a side where the buttons go. A little button box goes on the right hand side. So all the components are inside of an enclosure inside of the box.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But you can take these thumb screws and pull it off, and then tip that top plate up, and then you can see the different technologies inside the box.
So it's not really meant to be opened up, only when it happens.
It's yeah. Only thing it's meant to be opened up is put the buttons in and out. So there's no reason for anybody to get into it, and that's why I said it's the most of the technologies we build are self-monitoring and self-sustaining, and that's why it's not meant. We don't want them. Well, so I will tell another story. I won't give a name of who did it, but we had one of our members had one of the boxes, and they brought it to the summit with them. They said, "I think you're going to have to replace this one." I said, "Because?" They said, "Well, I got a little, he's mechanically oriented and he works on cars and all kinds of stuff. And he decided he could fix it himself. And so he just took off all the screws and opened the thing up and went down inside and started messing with wires and started undoing it and putting different things in and wiring it what he thought was right, and then plugged it in. And it literally blew all the electronics in the entire box. So he said, so things started smoking. So I unplugged it. And I said, that was probably smart. And he goes, so yeah, just let me know what that's going to cost. I said, well, it says on everything we do, like everybody else, if you fix it yourself, you break it, we'll have to charge you for whatever it is that, so.
And so for the last election, you deployed 10 units?
Yeah, there were 10 units. The 8 of them went to the group that I talked to, and then 2 of them went to another county. There's another county that was very interested in the program that they hadn't, it wasn't their idea originally. And we were looking for a few demonstration sites when the members obviously hope that we can figure out how we can get funding or move the program forward. And as a part of that, then they want to figure out, it's always good to have more references than one, right? So it's, so we said, okay, let's have a couple others. There was one that deployed that one, and then there was another one that had the election place location that was in or near their courthouse, and their network was broad enough that even the existing network they had didn't require the box they just needed the little mini box that has the buttons in it that were programmed to call for election. So they could use their courthouse system in order to do that. And so we gave that model also to a couple of our members, and all of them worked great. And so that's where the 10 of them went. And then the 2 of them that were on loan to the one that were the one that used the two suitcases, we got those back, and we actually use those for demonstration right now at conferences, and we used it actually at a demonstration for the elections office at the state of Texas here not too long ago. So
it sounds like it worked perfect. And so so now where do you go with this? I mean, you kind of got a test.
Well, yeah.
What happens?
So the county judge who asked for this, and he got the units to support his polling locations, waited a few months. Obviously, the elections people are super busy around the state. Even right after the election, polling, double counts, making sure all that's happening, and then they've got all this law that has to happen. So it kind of waited till after the winter was over. And but earlier, a few months ago, this spring, he reached out and asked us to go and do a demonstration for the Secretary of State's office, who has the election administration for the state of Texas. And we did that actually about a month ago. It's been just about right at exactly a month ago. And so we went, did the demonstration just like I described it here, is what I said, that we went and took the little box and already had the buttons out of the box. I said that we just set the box up on the table. It was already charged, batteries running. And I said, just hit the button, turned it on. It synchronizes to the local cell network there. And we could see that the light came on and said, okay, everything's good, it's connected. And so we handed out the buttons to the people that were there and had them push the buttons, go through the same process. And we also had a little computer there that we have a little notifier app that we just like in dispatch can have, that just pops up a little screen on your laptop that tells you this alert's going out, reads it off exactly, plays the recording exactly as it would be going across the radio to law enforcement. So it's gave that same example, and evidently it was impressed enough that we literally were there for 30 or 40 minutes answering questions. And they're going, well, what about this? And how easy they were just really impressed with how simple it was. They'd seen some other people, I think, had shown them some mobile apps that were, they said they'd kind of rejected them. Same thing the county had, because you just can't have a 12-step process of here's the problem. If it doesn't work, here's the 12 steps you have to go through to fix it to a 70-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when they're a little nervous anyway, because they think there's a threat going on. So yeah, that's not the time you're going to problem solve. So it's got to be really just dead simple. And they really like that. And I guess that so we heard last week, we just got a call back from them that they were going to have us come do another demonstration. I said, so were we calling to schedule that? Nope. We showed our bosses, and they said that they'd seen enough and heard enough. They said they called over to the grants coordinator and said, add ACS and this Ballot Box Defender to the list of the open grants that are available right now. And any of the ACS counties or any counties in Texas who want to pursue this program, submit a grant application. And assuming it, can't guarantee you're going to get it, but assuming you meet the qualifications of the grant, then shouldn't be a problem. You should be able to get that funded. So we reached out to our members, and I remember I told you I talked about and said there was a county that had done the demo that wanted to do that. That was Hockley County, Texas, and they agreed. That happens to be the home of the chapter president for our West Texas chapter, and so as a part of that, he agreed to take the lead. He says, I write grants all the time. I've already talked to my grant administrator, and she's going to help me. We're going to actually write this grant. And so what they're going to do is they're taking in, they'll use our network of people from both elections administrators as well as law enforcement to help write the narrative about the benefits of this, why it's there, meet the requirements of the state. And then once we think it meets the perfect template, because everybody uses the same ACS network, they have the same capabilities, what we're going to do is we're going to share that template with any of the counties in Texas, all of them if they want to, and make that available. When we're going to be at conferences coming up in a couple months, and at each of them we're just going to have a little registry. And if you say I'm interested in the ballot box, we're going to send them a copy, including the template. If they want to use that template, mass change their names and their unique requirements and anything they want to tweak on it. That way 90% or 95% of the value is already there. All they have to do is tweak the differences, and the elections office at the state's already been told, we already mentioned to them this is what we're going to do. And they said, actually, it makes it easier for us, because if it's all written the same way, and we're going, well, once one's approved, it's the same justification. It's just a matter of whether or not the numbers match. That you're asking for what would be your normal polling locations. And that varies anywhere from the smallest counties that we support in Texas have about 5 polling locations, and the biggest ones in like Houston have 600. So it's a big variance, but
mm-hmm. You mentioned chapters. What's a chapter compared to like an interlocal?
Okay, so good question. That's the chapter is kind of the foundation of what we do. It's kind of the backbone, if you will, of the structure of the ACS Interlocal.
Mm-hmm.
So as I mentioned earlier, counties come on board, and the counties typically are the ones that start it, and then they reach out to cities, schools, other counties, whatever within that area, and then they grow it from there. Once that forms even the first county, we form a network. If it's a new area that we don't have, then we give them a network and say, okay, here's your identification. As they expand that out, then that network expands both within to cities, schools, as well as other counties. And when they get to a point where they have 4 or 5 active members, then we encourage them to form a chapter. The chapter sets in place, so each of the cities and counties will appoint as the members will appoint a representative to work at the city, to work with the county. At the county level, once there's 3 or 4 counties, then they will work together to say, well, how can we work as a region to work more efficiently and effectively and work better, share education programs and stuff like that. How do we take advantage of this and spread this usage? And then as they grow, they get to a point where they have at least I think 2 or 3 members, and ultimately it gets big enough. They start an election process where they elect executive committee. The executive committee, like the president, vice president, secretary, and a treasurer. You can have more, but these executives are really the representatives that go to the state and national summits. Okay, so at the local level, a day event or a half-day event we call a forum. It's education and input. It's kind of a two-way discussion between the communities to disseminate information and gather information back from them and insight. And they meet with chapters. Those chapters determine what they're going to do regionally, what are the biggest issues, what do we all mostly agree on, and what are differences. And then they figure out what, as representatives of that, what's going to go into the state, what's going to be going to the national in order to. And then at the national summit is where we make decisions. Like 2 years ago, we looked at the thing like the brown box, and we said, that is the future. That's where we need to be. And this is going to be huge because it's such a national problem. And our focus initially is Texas, but once we formed the ACS nonprofit, it became a national goal. As they said, we wanted to disseminate this to anywhere in the United States.
So what is the brown box? That's a very ubiquitous name.
It is okay. So the brown box, it's got a sad history in the fact that it was sparked by the tragic Robb Elementary School shooting that happened in Uvalde, Texas, in 2022, I think it was. Anyway, the sheriff that responded to that is name's Randy Brown, and he was from Medina County Sheriff, and Medina County is right next to Uvalde. He was the first responder to arrive on scene, or one of the very first responders to arrive on scene in Uvalde from outside of Uvalde, and but he saw firsthand the chaos that can happen and when things go awry in an active shooter incident. And he said it kept him awake at night for quite some time, just thinking about what could have been different and how what went wrong and how do you solve that kind of a thing from ever happening again. And he said he envisioned in what he calls a secure tactical toolbox. And he said when I call a plumber to come to my house, he said they show up with a special toolbox that has tools I don't have in it. And he says, because plumbers have certain tools that make things go easier because of their job. And he says, and most trades do have something like that. And he says, law enforcement is no different. We have very special tools that we can use in an active shooter incident that you just can't carry around with you all the time. And he said, so providing these critical resources for law enforcement the minute that they arrive. So that's kind of what the brown box is. And for the last 2 years, I'll give you a little history, I guess. The last 2 years that we've been using both Sheriff Brown and a few other limited law enforcement resources, a lot of research and conducting different iterative designs and tests to craft this cutting edge solution that gives the power to the deputies and officers arriving to act swiftly and effectively to address this issue and of the active shooter, active attack. Until recently, this was a classified project, and to us internally, I mean, it's not really classified like, Department of Defense like classification, but we kind of kept it under wraps because we weren't sure. There's a lot of there's been a lot of discussions going on around Texas one way or another, of things going on, and we said let's just kind of keep it hush hush and let's figure out how to solve this problem, make sure we can solve the problem. And so we always called it because of that. Said, well, what do we call this thing? Well, in case we're caught in public, how about if we just call it the brown box? Because that's, everybody knew Randy Brown is the one whose idea it was, and our internally, and everybody, that doesn't tell anybody anything else.
So it has nothing to do with the color of the box.
That's so in honor of the sheriff, we did that, and then but now it kind of seems natural. Everybody's called it for 2 years the brown box, and at our summit, the leadership, we talked about leadership in our strategic session on the last day of the summit, which we always have, and the leadership agreed that the name for the official name of the box is going to be retained as the brown box. That's exactly what the internal product name is going to be going forward. So,
Joe, I have a question real quick.
huh?
Does it kind of do exactly what the Ballot Defender does? Calls different types of departments.
It does actually, and it's yes, it does the same thing and a lot more. It's got a much more sophisticated electronics in it because it has to do far more monitoring and far more interaction with systems. So the system itself is besides having the notifier in there that allows for one of the challenges, I guess, with the program was that as you might guess, let me back up a little bit and say that because of the material, one of the things that has to be inside the box are the ballistic shields for law enforcement. That was the number one critical thing they wanted, was ballistic shields to protect the officers. And but a lot of those shields, the preferred shield by most law enforcement we've talked to is using synthetic materials. And there's different types of them, but the most common one probably is known as Kevlar, at least by its name. But most all of these synthetic materials, it's not really heavily known, but in our research, that all of them are extremely affected by both temperature and humidity. So, for example, on some of the brands that are out there, some types of materials, it says that the shield will start to degrade if it's outside of the range between a low of 50 degrees and a high of 77 degrees. That's not a huge range. Anything outside of that, it starts to degrade. And now there's areas of degradation. The further it is, the worse it gets. But as an example of some of these shields are $8,000 shields. And the difference between, if you keep it at perfect temperature and no ultraviolet, perfect temperature, like a bottle of wine, you keep it at the right temperature, the right humidity, it'll last for 12 years in some of these. If you don't do that, and in the worst conditions, if you get outside of not that large of a range, it can lower it down to where the shield is far less effective, and they recommend having it replaced every 4 years. Well, $8,000 every 12 years or $8,000 every 4 years, that's a huge maintenance cost of replacement. So we realized, well, we can't just keep this box outside. It needs to be inside of a school, which is typically going to be within that closer range. And then we also monitor, because sometimes in summer or winter, the schools are off. And then if you're in North Texas, if it's off in the winter, you're going to get too cold. If it's off in the summer and in South Texas and they're working on the air conditioning, you get too hot. So we have these alarms and monitor both humidity and temperature inside of the box consistently, that keeps track of and makes sure that how long is that shield expected to last. If the alarms go off, you say, well, the building's under construction, we're replacing the air conditioner, it's going to be off for 2 months. Law enforcement can go out there, make arrangements, and grab the shields out of there and put them back at the sheriff's department in better conditions, until the school gets reactivated for fall and starts again in the fall, and the school's back having normal temperatures again. So that's one example. There's other examples too of how the box has to interact with the school's access control system, and every school has different access control systems. There's hundreds of them. So when you activate the box, law enforcement has to be able to get to the box, or somebody at the school has to stand at the door and let somebody in. And if there's an active shooter, most people aren't going to volunteer to stand at the door and let people in. So we want to interact with it so that when the school tells it that says, I'm calling for law enforcement, it now activates the box. It also notifies law enforcement, and it also activates that door leading to the box so that officers can get through that door also with a special card that allows them to get into the box so that they can get in and respond faster. Again, seconds save lives. So all of those interactions and all of that design and all those iterations made it far more complicated. So
like you were saying, iterations, you must have had law enforcement and school officials a part of that whole design process.
Well, we have, and matter of fact, we use that same technology in schools and other entities right now. It's just not put inside of a container like this. So it adds some additional challenges to it, and the space limitations also had us to redesign a lot of the electronics in order to do that. However, the function of what has to happen and how it interacts with those doors and how it interacts with those it works the same as the units that we manufacture to go into buildings for 10 years. And it's the technology, it's a patented technology. It's been patented for 10 years ago. We got a patent on that technology and how it actually operates with other access control systems in order to make that function. So that part already existed. We just didn't put it in such a confined space. So I do have an image of it if you
yeah. And while you're pulling that up, you're saying the technology that interacts. What is that patented technology?
So the patented technology, there's a couple of them. There's a patented technology for the network itself. So our network, which is where the communicator, that's one of the applications that's on top of that, the mass prophylaxis, a lot of those. There's about 20 different applications that sit on top of our network. And what it does is that the patents that exist for it have to deal with how to secure the information and do secure information sharing, so that you can it's not just shared, everybody can see it, or no, I can see it. It's literally, you can select groups within groups, and there's other ways to do that now, but the patent on that one goes back to literally over 20 years ago. And at the time, it was issued because there was no other way to do that with that program. It was one of the first internet applications that was developed that allowed for secure selective sharing between individual members and tracking where that information was shared. And so that's one of them. It has two patents actually, and then the other one is a technology that we also have we're responsible for, and it's called Common Pass. And Common Pass is a door control system. And the door control system, again, the patented Common Pass that we maintain with that one is the ability to interconnect and operate with other how it interfaces to access and work with any other door control system. So it's and there's a couple ways we can do it. But that's both of all those ways. There's 2 or 3 ways you can actually interact depending on the type of system they have now. But each one of them is available to us, and so we have to go in with and again, we're going to be going in with law enforcement at each school and each location and say, where are they going to put the box? What system do you have? How work with them each school to figure out which way we would recommend how we do that interface. They don't have to change anything. They don't have to upgrade their system. They use whatever system. They keep using whatever system. What it does, it just allows an override capability that when you push the button to activate the box and says, I want law enforcement here to help deal with this, it also allows them to override the door on the building leading to the box. And
Okay.
at the end of the process, when they finish the project and return back to normal or response ready for the box, essentially, then it deactivates that, and they have complete control, and law enforcement has no ability to get in the building at all. If they have to go through the front door like any other parent or anybody else and check in if you're going to come into the school.
Okay. Do you have a picture of that brown box?
Yeah,
I think that would be
Started-
interesting to see.
It's also put a dimension on so you can see, because it's the same slide, so it's hard to tell without the scale on it that says what it is.
Gotcha.
See that?
Oh, yeah.
That's it.
Just looks like an electrical box. You wouldn't know.
Yeah, except for the fact that it has a law enforcement seal on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's think about this. It's about 7 feet tall on the back. It's about just slightly over 3 feet wide. The door is about just slightly wider than 3 feet. So it's in other words, if you took a standard 36-inch wide door and it's 7 foot tall, or 6'8" to 7 foot is a normal door height, it's about 6.5 feet. So it's about 6 inches shorter than a normal door is the size of the door. And the box entirely is 10 inches on the outside dimension thick from the wall. And the inside chamber that holds everything is 8 inches. So it's got a 2-inch door on it. And the door itself is, as you see there, the door itself is made of AR 650 armor plated steel. So the box itself, besides having shields inside of it, it has 2 ballistic shields inside of it. The door itself will stop a 7.62 NATO round from an AK-47.
Wow.
So it is a tough box.
So that thing isn't light.
It is not light. It weighs about a little over 500 pounds.
Wow. Wow.
That's amazing.
Joe, so just so I understand, right, and I apologize if we're getting repetitive here. So this box, do like the teachers get clickers as well, like kind of like the Ballot Defender, or does it work differently?
No, well, what the law enforcement groups we work with right now, their plan is, and they've all met. We had a whole track of law enforcement at our summit this last time, and they pretty well agreed what we've done in the past. They said, I really like that plan, and Sheriff Brown is the one who actually came up with that originally, and they said I like it, and they said. So what happens is that each of the schools, for example, and each school out there would have the leadership of that school. Typically, they kind of limit it down to about 5 buttons, but oftentimes it's 4. Sometimes there's going to be like 1 fixed button at the front desk, so that the 1 or 2 of the secretaries, whoever they have there, can push a button to do it. And then there are usually 3 or 4 wearables that the principal will have one, the assistant or vice principal, depending on your state you're in, would have one. Maybe a counselor would have one, something like that. Maybe someone else. It depends on, like I said, the school and how big the school is. You might have 4 or 5 wearables, but those people that walk the hallways, there's the ones that are out amongst the kids when bells have rung and the kids are in the hallway. Some fight breaks out or something happens that they need law enforcement for whatever reason, or they observe something, then with those wearables, they hit the button. And when they do that, it's called activating the box, but at the same time it activates the box, it also triggers the notice going directly to law enforcement, including going directly to oftentimes hundreds or thousands of law enforcement officers. So everybody who's in the database and again, in the program, that all of the law enforcement are commissioned, that have authorized access to the schools in that county, all are part of a database. So we have the contact information with them, and we notify them instantly before they even hear, if they're off duty and they don't hear it on the radio, they will hear it. They'll get it on their text on their phone that says that XY elementary school is in lockdown, in lockdown, or that they're calling for law enforcement, and they can be heading that direction. And they, who knows, they may be literally out of uniform and a half a block, or visiting their kid at the middle school across the street, and they may be the first officer on scene. And they're in the state of Texas. They have what's called a TCOL ID, which is Texas Commission on Law Enforcement. It's required by the state. We provide the TCOL IDs, or we can as an option, but it's required that that TCOL ID be carried at all times, on duty or off duty, no matter they sleep with that thing. They always have their TCOL ID on them, and
And that's an
so
app? Is that an app or something?
it's an ID card.
Oh, okay, okay,
And it has a chip in it, like an access control card. And
okay.
so literally they could be in their shorts and flip-flops and be across the street, and they can run over to that, and that ID that they take out of their wallet or billfold, they would be able to read it to get into the building, and they'd
Oh,
go up
okay.
to the box and read it, and it would open it up, and there would be shields in there. So now, whether they're armed enough to do it or what they want to do, but they can grab that and they can run down the hall, and you literally made that response just because they happen to be coincidentally across the street. It's now a 60-second response, as opposed to what happened at most school shootings, which is 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. And
Wow.
it's far more time for the shooter to get organized and get prepared for bad things to happen. And if most of the incidents find that there's a group called Alert in Texas that does an extensive amount of really great work with response training. It's advanced law enforcement emergency rapid response training, I think, is Alert. But it is they do training sessions, and they had a little slide. I'll show you this one. It said this is actually this a graph like this is what got me and the county judge I spoke of earlier on the ballot box that to looking at, was a slide they showed. This was probably 8 years ago, and they said that statistically, they said that if you take a look at the most of the active shooter events, that from the time that the threat is realized, that in the first 2 to 3 minutes, that very few people, sometimes none at all, are injured. And by the time 5 minutes has gone, anybody, I think the term is that the incident is over. And however many lives are going to be lost, they're lost already. And so if you take a look at that, the average statistics when we started this program to do this before the brown box, just for buildings, the county judge asked me, he says their average response time was closer to 15 minutes. And he said, to some locations of the county, he said, can we address this problem? And I said, I don't know, but we can try, because it's I never say never until I prove I can't do it. And I said so in this particular case, in every situation, they've had several accidental and sometimes purposeful activations where one time a county court of law judge was being threatened with an active attack, and I believe the response time was it was to a county building, but it was by a city police officer, and the response time was less than 60 seconds because they just happened to be outside writing a ticket. And so we've been working on honing that program ever since, and the brown box is kind of the latest edition of that we've been working on for 2 years to try and figure out how to make it effective and also reliable, and to work in any situation, so that even, for example, the power on the brown box, as big as it is, the entire power on the brown box is a Cat6 cable. You don't have to have an electrician or power to power the box in. All you have to have is a Cat6 cable coming from the data switch in their IT closet, and plug it in, and all of the power as PoE comes in to recharge the batteries, everything, the power, the recharging program, all of it is being run off of power over Ethernet.
Is that the technology similar to what I saw when I was out there in Medina for yeah, the, what do you call it, digital energy or digital power?
It doesn't use, in that particular case, it doesn't use digital electricity because or class 4, I think it's called, electricity now, that's now certified, but it is from the time that, and the programs we could, the way that the class 4 digital electricity process worked, we can then converted it into high energy PoE, and it does use that technology from then on. The digital electricity switches are right now an unnecessary part of extra power or extra cost to the solution. So we said, but I think it's a good thing to add to it once the price comes down. But right now, this box is expensive enough as it is there's something like $4,000 worth of steel in the box, so it's not an inexpensive box. The little Ballot Box Defender is a lot cheaper. So.
Yeah. Well, that digital, energy is something I think we'll talk about that some other time on a different podcast. I just see a ton of advantage there. But, so you've got this developed, you've used, the experts in law and school and so forth. So where does it go now?
Well, cover a few of the things we kind of covered in our summit. I think that we are moving forward pretty quickly on it. The decision was made that at our summit, I said there was a law enforcement track. One of the things that happened at the summit also was at one of those sessions, it was also attended by some state legislators. The state legislation passed a bill, and the governor signed it into law in the last month, I believe, about 5 weeks ago. That it's called the Uvalde Strong Bill, and it's called, or House Bill 33, and HB 33. A part of it calls for this kind of capability, and it says that we have to have some way in which law enforcement can kind of puts the sheriff's department in each of the 254 counties in charge of organizing all of law enforcement, getting them all on the same page, working with all the schools, and coming up with a consistent way in which you can actually standardize the response and where things, and put the shield or shields going to be located at the schools so that they have the equipment on site that are necessary in order to do certain things, including breaching tools and a number of things. So the box on that part of it, the box as it is, meets that requirement and exceeds it because it's also self-monitoring and it does a lot of other things for reports for the sheriff's departments. However, so that bill's in place. The decision was made, and the sheriff invited us to attend with him the Texas, the Sheriff's Association of Texas. Their annual conference is coming up in actually a couple of weeks in Fort Worth, and we're going to be there with the sheriff and have a table, and we're going to be talking about both the brown box as well as the ballot box because they use the same sheriff's law enforcement network, and so it uses that same one. So if they're interested in one or both of the technologies, as we said, the ballot box has already got some potential funding. The brown box has a law that says they have to do it. Their funding's still up in question and how that's going to happen exactly. But we're working with that. As you saw in the picture, the decision was made by that law enforcement group and agreed by all the rest of the counties in our strategic meeting that the official color of the brown box is going to be brown. So, and it's kind of a brownish copper colored is what it is, and with gold trim at the top. And so they wanted to easily, the gold on it is going to be somewhat reflective. So if they come in at night or whatever, you could shine just down the hall, you'd be able to see the reflective gold. It's easily recognizable. They thought also that if you are a law enforcement deputy and you're in one county and you move 300 miles away, or in Texas, you could move 900 miles away and still be in the state. And when you do that and you show up in the schools, or then when you see that box, A, I know how it works, and B, I also know what's in it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's less training. It makes it more consistent to say that literally puts the law enforcement response teams at a higher level than saying, well, every county's going to do it a little differently, and we've all got to figure that out. And there's certain things that that I like about independent thought, but I also think that that we've also found, as we know, with NIMS and some of the other stuff that the states and feds have put in place for a long time out there, there's also good reasons to have standards too, and especially around emergency response. And inconsistency and lack of communication, things like that are always a problem. So
Yeah.
we can standardize on that, have it always work the same way, and have all the law enforcement more or less agree that this is the 98% solution. And if you want to put something else in the box, you can. It just, but at minimum, it has these 4 things or 5 things. That way, that's always going to be there. And so that's a program. We're still working on that. We've also we're working on a program to expand the Texas networks into other areas. We're currently in almost half the counties in Texas currently use one form or another of our high security network. The rest of them, it's pretty easy to deploy. We just need to make sure. Again, we'll discuss that with sheriffs as they come into the conference in a couple of weeks, and talk with them about where they are and where we need to go, and who might take the lead in their area. So anyway, that's kind of we're also trying to figure out from a legal standpoint. Jim, you're kind of a little bit familiar with this. There's also requires that, like if any interlocal agreement, you have to have an interlocal. It involves an agreement, right?
Mm-hmm.
Texas law says that every agreement has to be signed by the governing body of that entity. So for example, in order to join the interlocal, they have to have the county has to have the county court is what it's called in Texas. The commissioners and the county court has to the commissioners court's what they call it, and commissioners court has to approve it. Then the county judge has to sign it, and then be authorize who's doing this work. And anyway, it's cities that come on board, their law enforcement, they have to do the same thing. Schools have to do the same thing. And so we're also trying to look at our processes, and some of our board members that are working on that right now in order to look at the Texas law and figure out what are some of the easier ways we can simplify that process, because it needs to be sort of detailed for the county sheriff themselves and the county, because they're controlling everybody else and they're working back with other counties and other regions, chapters and stuff like that. But the cities or schools, all they are is a recipient of being able to push a button and then activate it. So their role is much simpler. So it doesn't have to be as complicated as an agreement. So make it easier for the schools and smaller cities and things like that to join a simple agreement that says, here's just a 1 or 2 page understanding of it, of saying, here's your role and here's how that's going to work. And yes, you're going to work back with the county to do this. So
Okay. I know at the beginning, I mean, 3 technologies, the ballot box, the brown box, and then I think it was My Nexus.
yes.
What is that one?
So okay, well, the My Nexus, like I said, that's an exciting one also. And it was actually a pretty big topic of discussion at our summit. Even though the summit was in Texas, some of the presenters that we talked about were from San Francisco Public Utilities Commission. SFPUC has one who had the vision for this particular product, and we've been working with them for years. And they actually presented via Zoom to the members in Texas, many of who are going through drought right now. And there was a big discussion about how do we take that and move it to the next level. So what My Nexus is at its core, I guess, is that it is a system that is created to connect the information coming in from the AMI system. In this case, SFPUC's AMI system. It pulls data from their billing and customer database. So we got contact information of every single household in all of the SFPU area. And then we take that information and we connect it up with our mass alerting system, which does texting and emails and voice and other ways of communicating, and then puts a UI user interface on a rules engine that allows the administrators in their customer service department to set up rules about, well, how, at what point that the AMI says that certain statistics or things happen that of water usage that look to be anomalies, and when that anomaly happens, what would trigger a message, and then what template would that actually trigger in step one, and is that sent by text, email, or voice, the first one, and then at what time did they receive that message, and then if they respond to it, how long do they have to try and respond before we send them a reminder, and then if that one's what system is that, maybe it's sent by text first, then email, then voice, and text and email may come out at 2 or 3 in the morning. Voice, probably don't want to call them at 3 in the morning. You probably want to wait till like 10 in the morning. So, and all of that's controllable from that user interface to say, how do I want it to work and interact, and send these nice little gentle reminders to say, you want to save a little money and also be great to the planet and save a little bit on the water usage. Maybe you have a leak because we noticed between midnight and 6 in the morning, you've never had any water usage. And all of a sudden, every single night now you're using 2 gallons every minute constantly. Even midnight to 6 in the morning, maybe want to check your toilets, maybe want to check a few other things to say, probably have a leak.
Did SFPUC, I mean, how long ago, and have they seen any results?
Yes, they've been using that for a number of years. They keep enhancing it, adding in. We start off with single household properties, and then they went to multiple household properties. There are other discussions and things they talked about, kind of trying to get into, so they're trying to get it to where everywhere that uses water, that how do we make this more beneficial? Because I'd seen that they actually made a presentation a couple of years ago. We had a summit out in California. And they came and spoke at that. The customer service group came and spoke at a presentation at that. And I don't remember the exact statistics. It's been long enough, but I remember that the amount of gallons that they could show were saved, and said that, when they first started it, they told us, they said, I have no idea how the people of San Francisco are going to like or not like this. They're going to say, we're big brother looking over your shoulder, blah, blah, blah. They said it's none of that. I mean, virtually none of that. They said it's been overwhelming. Everybody thinks it's just great. They said, it's that may be because it saves them money on their water bill. I would think that'd be part of it. But I think also people generally, if they kind of know and you're not beating them up about it, they generally don't want to be wasteful, and they don't want to waste the resources. So, but the numbers they said, it was dramatically, it was hundreds of millions of gallons of water that were saved, and it's tremendous what the impact was. So so when she talked about this at our session, the several people in Texas, we deal a lot with smaller communities. They're going, well, how do we move that over, because we don't have that type of AMI system that San Francisco would have, and so we're researching that right now. We're looking at and trying to figure out how we actually pull that into and create the APIs to both. And again, the same thing. How do we pull over the AMI data so we can see the statistics on the AMI data? And then how do we look at the customer billing database so we know how to contact them and get that information? And then, of course, we already have the connection to our communicator, and the UI is going to be pretty much the same. So it's just how do we create the APIs to connect up with these other systems? And we're trying to figure that out right now, but it's not really a funded project. We said we're going to research it and we'll find out where it goes. But we have a number of our members are looking for grants that are available for this, because like I said, there's major sections of Texas right now that are whole San Antonio area, the whole Edwards Aquifer area, in that south central to southern Texas is dramatically dry right now. Almost all the lakes are at like 10%, 12% water. I think there's somebody told me the other day, only 2 lakes in central Texas are at normal flow. All the rest of them are, the vast majority are less than 20% of water in the surface water.
And that area is growing.
And that area is growing. That area is
Right.
growing.
Puts more stress on the resources.
It does. Well, as an example, in the where we had our conference a couple years ago, there's a town called Castroville, Texas, which is straight west of San
Right.
Antonio. Castroville has there because of the San Antonio itself growing is now going into that county, and they currently have, just to give you an example, city of Castroville has something like about 2,000 maybe homes in it right now, and the and in the next 7 years or 8 years, they have currently under construction right now, grading the grounds and all this other stuff, something like 20,000 housing starts.
Yeah, they're all going to need water.
Right on top of the aquifer. So, and
Yeah.
somebody made the comment in the summit, they go, well, it's great, you want to live here, but what are you going to drink? Because
So, I mean, sounds like great technologies. Where's ACS going? I mean, that's a lot.
yeah, that is a lot. The we talk about that on strategically a lot of days actually. Like I said, we're meeting with a number of even our we're re-engineering all of our processes and kind of going through to streamline and figure out, well, what things, how do we make this faster? How do we make this where it's more automated? We're very fortunate in the fact that we have a great development team. And so some of the ways we've decided we're going to have to fix some of these things is to say, we need a software program that does this. It's very unique to an interlocal. And it's not something commercially available, but our software development team has looked at it and said, well, we could get a couple more developers to work on some of these other things. They said that would not be that difficult to actually spit that out in about a year. So we could actually write our own software code and create our own capability to manage some of these things. We are I would say that well, the we've had something like about have to think about that question. I would say that as a 501c3 nonprofit, our focus still remains on providing these high impact services, but we are trying to become more warmly open to the idea of doing charitable contributions, even though 5% of our monies actually ever come from contributions, from just charitable gifts. But in order to prepare for a lot of these things we need to do, we need to open up that discussion and with some of our members about how do we go about, and because there's a lot of people, the work we do and the work that our members and us are doing together, I think, as I said, it's really a national problem, and I think I think some of the solutions are just tremendous, and but it's not just getting the solutions in place; it's preparing the pathway or the road to get to where we can put those solutions in place. We've been approached, some of our members have been approached by other states that want to join the program. We can definitely do that. But with each state, whether or not, you remember when we did this in California, it was not a fast process because we kind of got to figure out how to do it. And if we're going to like roll out either one of the ballot box or the brown box, it can't take 3 or 4 or 5 years to figure out how we're going to do it. It needs to be something that's a cookie cutter that says here, if 3 different states want to do it, there's a definite mechanism and a procedure to go through, and it's simple, and here's the process. So we know what those are. We just have to define them and then figure out how we get all those pieces in place. And unfortunately, most of our members aren't going to be wanting to try and figure out how we fund going to other states, and I get other areas and other states don't necessarily want to fund all of it on their own coming in. So I think it's a perfect application for contributions and charitable giving, because I think there's a lot of people out there who would like to see this moved into their states or into their communities, but just understand that it takes a village for us to fix this problem. and contributions, and especially since we're a charitable nonprofit, then that's it allows us to do that. The so anyway, that's with our divided climate today, the way it is in the United States, I think this collaborative approach could actually spark some sort of a viral act where other states and other communities want to join the program. We want to encourage that, and as soon as we can. But even though we're a small organization and we try to stay lean and not, because it's not creating a heck of a lot of overhead for our members. But at the same time, we've always had this very bold vision of saying that if we can work at the communities, working with communities and solving it at that level, and not relying on state and federal resources and guidance on how to do stuff, just let's figure it out at the local level. And what we're finding is that literally from communities from East Coast to West Coast, like I said, 80 or 90% of it, if you're really thinking like a local city or a local county or a local township, it's very similar. There's a lot of similarities, and there's certainly flexibility between different parts of different cultures, but that can be easily built in, and is already built into a lot of the systems we have. So, but they're effectively used, like I said, from east to west. So,
I've got to say, with the mere founding of ACS, and then probably at that time you would have never known or even imagined you'd be part of school safety and election, polling integrity and safety and uh, drought management. I mean, it's crazy, but I think, like I said earlier, that that marriage of technology, matching it up with the the use and the need, and you've found a way to get into a lot of different areas.
well, somebody asked me. It used to be more frequent they would ask me this, but it used to be the statement that we've had people come up at conferences when I do a presentation. They're going to look at what we're doing, and they're going, "So this started 20 years ago. How possibly did you have the vision of what this was going to be 20 years ago?" I mean, any of who had that vision? Was that you? And I'm going, it wasn't me. And I said, but I can tell you right now, the official answer is from all of us was that what we knew was that there was a need, and we knew we were better if we got people together who kind of thought alike and figured out how would we solve this and start chipping away at it. And I said, best I could probably say is, if you'd asked me back in 2006, I said, which direction, where's your direction? Where are you going to be? What's your vision? And I would be sort of somewhere out there. I said, in that area. I said, we're kind of going in that direction, sort of. And I said, and we'll adjust as we go. And we've had failures. We've had things we tried, and the members and all of us said, okay, that isn't what we wanted. Fortunately, it wasn't the technology. It was trying some procedure or process of how we were trying to bring in new members or what we were trying to do. And but it's been a lesson learned the whole time, and it continues to be. It's but I can tell you that the level and the quality and the type of solutions that we're now creating, it like I said, it literally it has the power to strengthen and bring about this capability to a countless number of communities that to making this world of safety and strength and resilience a shared reality.
Awesome. All right. Isaac, any last comments, questions, words?
I think it's pretty amazing stuff what you're doing. I think that it can help a lot of people, and especially at the local level, it sounds like, and it's just fascinating stuff. I do have one question, is especially with the brown box. I thought the brown box was really cool. Is that is it? Do you think it's only going to happen at the local level where there's problems like this that are more common, or can it go bigger? Can it go like more standardized for, state, national?
Sure. So I was the I was actually thinking about that and thinking about this interview and the discussion we're having, and some of our members. I had that conversation with Sheriff Brown, and I said, so obviously the bill HB 33 and the work you're doing over there, the focus is schools. We've got to figure out how that's definitely a main threat there. And I said that, so what are their uses? I mean, there's other sources out there as well. There's other threats. And he goes, well, I can already tell you, he said that I think that he's in some of the areas I've talked to, he and others have talked about saying that they would like in some larger schools, the way they're laid out there, we're going to be even having more than one box. They'd have 2 or 3 breach points, and everywhere there's a breach point or a designated point for law enforcement entry, then there needs to be a box there to grab the tools and move forward with it. And so I think there's going to be some of that. He also said that I'd like to see it in our new courthouse over here. He said, matter of fact, all of the annexes, which are the distributed courtrooms and buildings for county offices throughout the county, they all have courtrooms. He said, everywhere there's a courtroom, there should be one of these boxes. He said, now there are some annexes and some locations I've seen that it also shares an office across the hall from the courthouse is an office for the Texas State Police or county sheriff's office or something. Probably not as important there that you have the box. You could just have it actually inside the office with all the deputies or the troopers that work out of there. But absolutely, I think that I think municipal courtrooms. So we've talked with some of our members that have municipal courts, and where would I put this, and what would it look like? How would I put and you bring up state. Most of our members don't think like that. They don't worry. State deals with its own stuff up there, but between us, I guess, in this call, I think it's absolutely. I think at the state, I think that I live where there's also tons of federal offices around here, and I wouldn't know why you wouldn't actually do some sort of an arrangement between local police, sheriff's departments, and federal security to put those in all federal courthouses and federal buildings. This just when you walk in the door, there's literally a box sitting there. And again, why not have them look the same? It's the same box everywhere. That if you're in law enforcement anywhere in this country, that's what it looks like. And if I get there, I look at it, and I know what that means. I know what's in there, and I know I've got the tools that allows me to move forward with confidence that I'm not going to be taken out in the first round, at least, because I've got some protection and I've got my own way to fight back. So I've shared that with some people where I live here with some individuals that work for SWAT, and their SWAT team, and showed them the concept of it now that it's a little bit public. And they thought it was the coolest thing ever. They said, so can we put this in here? And here's some other things we could like to put in here. And that's all possible. There's the limit. There's the amount of space you have. And they saw that there was a great asset. And they said that whenever we're ready and it's actually in production, they said, it's okay if we talk to our sheriff about it. I'm going, sure. That's absolutely. The intent is to get the message out and get the word out.
Yeah, pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, appreciate your time.
You bet. Thank you. Thank you both. And it's good questions. Good discussion. I really appreciate it. So
Yeah, thank you, Joe. This was great you kind of gave us behind the scenes. What is everybody concerned about? So it was interesting, very interesting.
Good. All right. Well, I look forward. Maybe there'll be an episode 3. So
once you start getting all that deployed, yeah, we'll have to see how it looks.
Hey, love to do an update. So, all right. Thank you both.
Take care.
All right, thank you, Joe.
Bye-bye.